We walk into a grocery store today without a second thought. The safety of our food is something we simply take for granted. Labels and inspections have turned eating into one of our safest rituals. But this level of security is a very recent luxury in our story. For the vast majority of human history, every meal was a gamble. Back then, a single mistake could be your last. Rewind 300,000 years, and the world becomes far more treacherous. Our ancestors stood in a wilderness where hunger was a constant shadow. They were surrounded by thousands of species they didn't yet understand. Every plant they encountered was a mystery waiting to be solved. Somewhere in this green wall was life-sustaining nutrition. But somewhere else was enough poison to kill within hours. The terrifying reality is that the two often looked identical. Without books or guides, the stakes of curiosity were absolute. Evidence suggests survival depended on a brutal process of trial and error. Unlike apex predators that can fast for days, humans require steady energy. Every sunrise brought the same desperate challenge: find enough to eat. This constant pressure forced early humans to make impossible choices. Nature wasn't trying to feed them, it was testing them. A plant's bright colors were often warnings rather than invitations. Even a successful forage might yield only a handful of calories. Plants are far from defenseless. They are masters of chemical warfare. Unable to run, they evolved toxins to discourage anything with an appetite. Bitter alkaloids and poisonous saps became their silent, stationary weapons. The forest was a quiet battlefield where every species defended itself. Ancient humans had to navigate this invisible minefield just to survive. So how did they begin to decode nature's deadly secrets? The first clues likely didn't come from the plants themselves. Early humans watched the creatures around them with keen, desperate intensity. They looked for patterns in the behavior of those who thrived. This strategy of cross-species observation provided a crucial starting point. By witnessing what the deer and the birds chose to consume, humanity began to map out a rudimentary menu of the wild. But researchers suspect our ancestors quickly discovered a major flaw. Animals are not humans. Their biologies can be radically different. A plant that sustains a bird can easily be lethal to a mammal. Observation was a guide, but it could never be a guarantee. Eventually, the time for watching had to come to an end. Every group eventually reached the same terrifying threshold. Someone had to take the first, calculated risk of the first bite. Even by the fire's light, the forest's mysteries remained formidable and potentially lethal. Elders likely recognized that animal behavior was an imperfect guide for human survival. Just because a goat could digest a plant didn't mean a human would. Anthropologists suspect these early thinkers realized their biology was unique and dangerously fragile. Every new discovery required a systematic, if primitive, protocol of cautious evaluation. They looked for biological warning signs, sticky saps, milky residues, or acrid smells. A tiny sample on the tongue often served as the first line of defense. This burn test provided immediate feedback without the risk of a lethal dose. While painful, a blistered mouth was a small price to pay for communal safety. For the young, witnessing these reactions was a vital lesson in environmental literacy. But some toxins are patient, hiding their presence until long after ingestion. The strategy evolved into a waiting game. Eat a sliver, then observe. Evidence suggests that often the most resilient members served as the final testers. When the wait rule failed, the results were often agonizing and visible. These failures were tragic, yet they provided the group with invaluable data. By observing specific symptoms, they began to catalog the chemical dangers of their territory. Yet, for every poison, there were rewards that made these risks necessary. Contact tests on the skin helped identify irritants before they ever reached the mouth. If the skin remained clear and the taste was sweet, the tension broke. Successes like these were more than just meals. They were communal victories. A safe, abundant food source allowed the group to finally exhale and settle. In these moments, the constant pressure of hunger was replaced by collective relief. To ensure this safety endured, knowledge had to be codified through storytelling and mime. Performative warnings helped the next generation internalize the physical reality of poisoning. They were taught to associate specific botanical shapes with the threat of death. Eventually, the fleeting nature of memory was reinforced by more permanent visual records. On cave walls, the distinction between life and death was etched in charcoal. These weren't just drawings, they may have been the world's first medical textbooks. This growing database allowed hunters to look beyond the migration of the herds. They began to see the landscape as a complex pantry of hidden calories. Survival was transitioning from a matter of luck to a legacy of inherited wisdom. Generation by generation, the safe list grew more nuanced and geographically specific. Elders likely enforced strict boundaries, protecting the future of the entire lineage. Even complex preparation techniques, like peeling or leaching, were passed down with precision. Centuries later, their descendants walked these same woods with an earned confidence. They no longer feared the environment. They understood its ancient, hidden rules. The wilderness had been transformed from a place of danger into a home. Today, we navigate our food landscape with an ease that borders on indifference. Our safety tests are performed by machines and regulated by distant, invisible authorities. Yet, we carry the legacy of those first brave tasters in every bite we take. In our world of abundance, we rarely question the safety of the food we hold. But behind every bite stands a vast, silent lineage of trial and error. That simple sweetness is, in fact, a hard-won inheritance from the deep past. Thousands of years ago, every new discovery was a calculated, life-altering risk. These early foragers were likely the world's first true experimental scientists. Every journey into the unknown required keen observation and an impeccable memory. Today, we formalize these ancient lessons in classrooms, mapping out chemical dangers. We teach the biology of toxins, yet the core message remains unchanged. The stakes were once written in the visceral language of survival and loss. Our modern diet is essentially a victory lap of prehistoric discovery. Our ancestors didn't just find food, they curated a safe world for us. Even a common sandwich is a collection of once wild, once dangerous ingredients. Domesticated over millennia, these plants carry the fingerprints of human selection. Education began in the field, where the difference between life and death was subtle. Visual cues, like the spots on a mushroom, became the first warning signs. Learning the texture of safety was a tactile and vital part of growing up. Forging a path forward required knowing exactly what to leave behind. This oral tradition ensured that a single mistake didn't have to be repeated. Survival depended on this chain of knowledge, passed from one generation to the next. Tracking prey often led hunters into unfamiliar and deceptive botanical territory. In the wild, vibrant colors are often nature's way of signaling a warning. Distinguishing a berry from its toxic look-alike required an expert eye for detail. Elders likely taught the young to look beyond the fruit to the leaf. To touch and remember was to build a mental map of the landscape. Shared wisdom allowed them to walk past temptation and toward true sustenance. As humans migrated, they encountered environments their ancestors never knew. New climates meant new species and the return of lethal uncertainty. Leadership in a new land required more than strength, it required extreme caution. When faced with the unknown, early humans developed rigorous testing protocols. Evidence suggests they used skin sensitivity as a primary defense against toxins. They waited for hours, watching for any sign of an adverse reaction. Evidence suggests they learned to identify subtle warnings, like these purple splotches. This is hemlock, a plant that deceptively mimics the appearance of edible species. Understanding this distinction was the difference between a meal and a funeral. They moved towards safer harvests, refined by generations of trial and error. Eventually, humans stopped merely finding food and began to actively shape it. By culling bitter competitors, they gave their preferred plants the room to thrive. This was the birth of stewardship, the earliest inkling of the agricultural revolution. They were no longer just survivors. They were becoming architects of the earth. Small, managed plots turned the chaotic wilderness into a predictable, life-giving resource. Over centuries, these selected plants would slowly lose their natural chemical defenses. Today, scientists look deep into the cellular structures of these ancient survivors. They are decoding the chemical warfare plants once used to stay alive. Every data point traces back to a decision made thousands of years ago. A single charred seed acts as a time capsule from the Paleolithic era. Researchers suspect our ancestors' preferences fundamentally altered the course of botanical evolution. We are the beneficiaries of a dialogue with nature that never truly ended. For the elders, the forest was no longer a mystery, but a home. Now, it was the next generation's turn to inherit this living legacy. Success was no longer measured in wealth, but in the peace of knowing. They lived in rhythm with the wild, observing the creatures that shared it. A lifetime of experience had transformed the landscape into a familiar sanctuary. The harvest was no longer a gamble, but a reward for their diligence. But even the most skilled gatherers could not escape the fragility of life. Burials like this suggest a profound respect for those who held the tribe's wisdom. In returning to the earth, they became part of the cycle they studied. Today, we often discard more calories than our ancestors could ever hope to gather. Our food is now engineered for maximum sweetness and effortless consumption. We enjoy the fruit without ever knowing the dangers our ancestors once faced. From the height of her experience, Aya looks out over a changing world. In her hand, she holds the potential for 1,000 future harvests. With a simple gesture, she participates in the oldest human act of faith. These seeds represent the enduring bond between humanity and the fertile earth. For Aya, the cycle of observation and preservation never truly ends. She retreats toward the fires, where the day's findings will be shared. Around the hearth, the harvest is more than just calories. It is community. But curiosity can be a dangerous trait in an unforgiving prehistoric wild. A single mistake could end a life in a matter of hours. The group carries the visceral memory of those who fell before them. These warnings form the invisible borders of their known safe world. The lesson is internalized. The dangerous specimen is cast aside for safety. They return to the proven staples that have sustained the lineage for generations. Every berry and grain here has been paid for with ancestral experience. Now it is time for the next generation to test their instincts. Rena encounters a temptation, a fruit her mother has not yet described. She begins a sequence of testing developed over thousands of years. In this silent dialogue with nature, patience is her most vital tool. Evidence suggests they used skin sensitivity to detect the sting of toxins. Next comes the scent and a tiny, non-swallowed taste to gauge chemistry. This patient scrutiny separated our ancestors from those who did not survive. Having passed the trial, she gathers the fruit for the tribe's benefit. Aya recognizes the find, a new entry in their shared botanical library. It is a moment of triumph. The collective knowledge has officially expanded. Today, we view these ancient struggles through the clinical safety of glass. To us, these are curiosities. To them, they were matters of life. We often wonder how they could have navigated such a lethal landscape. The answer lies in the bravery of these prehistoric pioneers of nutrition. We are the descendants of the survivors, those who learned their lessons well. Our modern convenience is built upon a foundation of ancient, lethal trials. We stand atop a mountain of data, gathered one bite at a time. For every successful harvest, there were likely many moments of painful failure. Yet hunger drove them to keep searching, to keep cataloging the earth. Every root pulled from the dirt was a scientific experiment in progress. They learned to bypass nature's armor using stone tools and sheer persistence. They discovered that even pungent, hidden bulbs could provide essential nutrients. Eventually, heat became a chemical tool, transforming inedible tubers into life-sustaining meals. Under the savanna stars, the camp became a sanctuary of shared thought. Here, the day's discoveries were debated and etched into the group's memory. The fire provided more than heat. It illuminated the path of human progress. While some gathered, others refined the tools that would secure their future. Art and observation began to document their unique place within the ecosystem. They were no longer just individuals, but a single, powerful collective brain. From these humble forays, we would eventually master the world's very landscapes. Today, we occupy a world defined by that hard-won certainty. The wilderness has been restructured into a geometric landscape of human choice. We no longer wait for nature's permission. We monitor its every pulse. Beneath the surface, we decode the molecular blueprints of our own survival. It is a sophisticated stalemate where ancient botany meets modern chemical precision. This vast evolution allows for the simplest, most profound of human acts. The existential gamble of the past has been replaced by quiet confidence. Feeding the next generation is no longer a risk, but a promise kept. Yet this mastery was born from a humble spark of prehistoric curiosity. Early foragers likely sensed a hidden logic within the chaos of the green. They began to see the environment not as a threat, but as a resource. In the shadows of these giants, humanity found the courage to innovate. With every gathered seed, they stepped closer to the world we know today. A story of survival that transformed a wild planet into a human home.